Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if something happening before you are even born could affect how a child behaves years later? Today we're diving into a fascinating study that might just have some clues. This study looks at a special kind of protein called C-reactive protein, or CRP. Now, CRP is like your body's alarm system for inflammation. If there is an injury or infection, CRP levels go up. What is really interesting is that researchers can measure CRP in the cord blood of a newborn. Cord blood is collected right after a baby is born, and it can give us a snapshot of what was happening in the baby's body, and potentially the mother's right around the time of birth. The big question this paper is trying to answer is this: can the amount of CRP in a baby's cord blood predict if that child will have more symptoms of ADHD later on, specifically around age 5? ADHD is super common, affecting millions of kids, and it is characterized by things like inattention, impulsivity, and being overly active. Scientists have a hunch that inflammation during pregnancy or around birth might play a role in how a child's brain develops, and therefore could be linked to disorders like ADHD. But direct evidence linking cord blood CRP to ADHD symptoms has been pretty limited until now. So how did they go about finding this out? They looked at data from two large groups of mothers and their children in France called the ELFE and Waerden cohorts. Imagine these as huge, long-term science projects where researchers follow kids from the very beginning of their lives, collecting tons of information. They gathered cord blood samples from over 1,000 babies in one group and over 800 in the other. Then, when the children in these studies reached about 5.5 years old, the researchers used a well-known questionnaire called the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire, or SDQ, to check for ADHD symptoms. Parents would fill this out, answering questions about their child's behavior, focusing specifically on hyperactivity and inattention. What they wanted to know was if babies who had higher levels of CRP in their cord blood were more likely to have more of these hyperactivity and inattention symptoms later on. To make things comparable, they decided to look at CRP levels above the 75th percentile. Think of this as looking at the top 25% of babies with the highest cord blood CRP levels. Now for the results. This is where the story really unfolds. After doing all their calculations and making sure to account for other factors that might influence a child's behavior, like the mother's age, education, whether she smoked during pregnancy, and the child's sex, they found something pretty interesting. When they combined the information from both groups, they saw that babies with higher levels of CRP in their cord blood were indeed more likely to have a higher number of ADHD symptoms at age 5. This association held up for different ways of looking at ADHD symptoms, whether they were considered just ticking over into a borderline range or going into a more abnormal range, and even when they just looked at the overall score of symptoms. So what does an adjusted odds ratio of, say, 1.42 mean? It means that children who had higher cord blood CRP levels were about 42% more likely to have borderline ADHD symptoms compared to children with lower CRP levels, after accounting for all those other factors. That is a significant finding. The researchers are suggesting that this means inflammation around the time of birth might be an early contributor to the development of ADHD. It is like an early warning sign, a hint of potential vulnerability. CRP, being a marker of inflammation, could potentially be an early indicator that a child's neurodevelopment might be on a different trajectory. Now, it's super important to remember what this study doesn't say. It doesn't say that having high CRP causes ADHD. Correlation is not causation. As we always say, what it does say is that there is a link, an association. There could be other factors at play, or the inflammation itself might be one piece of a bigger puzzle affecting brain development. The researchers were really upfront about some limitations too. For example, the ADHD symptoms were reported by parents using a questionnaire. While the SDQ is a good tool, it is not a formal clinical diagnosis of ADHD. Also, there could be other things that influence inflammation and neurodevelopment that they weren't able to measure, like the mother's diet during pregnancy, and of course these studies were done in France. So we need to be careful about applying these findings directly to every population everywhere. Also, they use the 75th percentile as a cutoff for elevated CRP. There isn't one single standard cutoff for healthy newborns. So this was a choice they made to look at the higher end of the range. So what is the big takeaway here? This research adds to a growing body of evidence suggesting that what happens during pregnancy and around birth can have lasting effects on a child's behavior and development. It highlights the importance of maternal health and minimizing inflammation during pregnancy. It is not about blaming anyone, but about understanding the complex interplay of factors that shape a child's brain. This study also points towards CRP as a potential early signal, not for diagnosing ADHD, but for identifying infants who might benefit from closer monitoring of their neurodevelopment. Future research could explore these links further. For instance, looking at other inflammatory markers alongside CRP, or following children for longer to see if these symptom patterns lead to formal ADHD diagnosis. Overall, this is a really exciting piece of the puzzle in understanding the developmental origins of ADHD and other neurodevelopmental conditions. It's a reminder that those early moments are critical. What do you think about these findings? Does this change how you view the importance of prenatal health? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this video insightful. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching and stay curious.